The Photowalk is a Loading Zone production.
Come on, pups. Here we go. All right, wait there. Come on, this way. He is daft. Our Sabarkalot. This morning, driving out to the woodland where I'm walking today, which is in part of leafy Berkshire, close to where I live. There's an advert on LBC. It has a doorbell at the start. So we're driving along in a car, and every single time there's a doorbell, guess who gets up to have a good bark? Barney, honestly. And the thing is, we don't even have a doorbell at home. I don't know where he's learned this behaviour from. He does it when he sees it on telly as well. Come on, Barnes, this way, this way. Let's go through the gate. Come on, don't sniff the gate. Let's go through the gate. Barney, the entire walk will be you just sniffing the gate. Come on. All right. Let's get an establishing picture from today's photo walk. It's quite nice. The sun, well, it's quite early. We still have a 7 in front of the clock time. Reasonably early. I know not as early as some of you photo walkers, but that means we've got low sun firing through the woodland here, and it's just illuminating the trees that are changing colour before our eyes this week. Let's get that shaft of light coming through. It's just the path ahead of me, but it's a pretty good way to start today with Barney just walking into shot. Barnes, come here. Come here, come on. I'm trying to get a picture of that tree without you in it. There we go. I've got it. Come on.
The Foreword.
We talk quite a bit today about nature and making pictures within. Now, I'm not next to an incredible mountain range or powerful seascape at the moment, but you really don't need to be, do you? We live cheek by jowl, even those of us in more urban setups with nature. Admittedly, sometimes for some it's harder to see the woods for the number 31 bus, I'm sure, but as Attenborough's shows teach us, it is constantly there. We just need to learn to love it a little bit more. And I think, by the way, that one of my guests, because it's a husband and wife duo today, one of my guests will make a quote about the legacy of well, he talks a lot about nature, but the legacy of COVID in particular, and its relationship with nature that is nothing short of inspiring. Or maybe that's wrong, actually. maybe I mean it's like a comment that comes at you like a wet fish that launches itself from the fish counter in insert your favourite shop name here and slaps you around the face, leaving you standing there with a stupefied look on your face. I mean, there's nothing positive with a capital P about that nasty virus, but there are a stream of notices served by it that won't make much sense now, but when you hear the interview later, you'll know the part that I'm talking about. And I dare say, if you're like me, you'll nod with a kind of vigour that gives you a headache. Anyway, I just wanted to signpost that moment. It's coming up. So, today's guests were individual photographers, artists, creatives in their own lives. One of them, Matthias, had been travelling the world for many decades as a national geophotographer, a national treasure in Scandic climes, I hear. But together they are one almighty force for understanding this incredible world that we live in. And as you'll hear by the world's longest known introduction to an interview ever noted later on in this show, I, dear friend, who walks with me on these episodes, didn't quite unpick this. And so I'm going to accept the kind offer that they made of meeting up in London when they next visit to investigate further some of their individual natural world art installations. I'm not sure I'm with you, Neil. Look, what I'm trying to say is that when I was editing the interview, a sudden bolt of realization struck me that there were all kinds of things we could have talked about that we didn't touch on. That just gives me an excuse to chat to them again, doesn't it, really? Could have been a plan. Having said that, I do feel very inspired by the message they had, which is about kindness, really. Because that, I hope, is what our programme's about, this little thing that we do together of a Friday. Barney, this way. Why are you heading back to the car? We are literally 3 minutes into the walk. Really? Come on, this way. I was telling a friend the other day about an artist, since artist and artistry is a lot of what we're going to talk about today, called César Manrique, who is a Spanish artist, or rather was a Spanish artist. Or maybe he would have said a Canarian artist. Anyway, he was the, quote, benchmark of modern Canarian art and fashioned his art and life literally into the volcanic rocks of Lanzarote, his native island. He showed how you can work with nature, with art and paint and sculpting. And when I went to live for a year on the island, as part of my very early radio adventure, he was probably the very first artist I really enjoyed. I'd had lessons about the greats in art for sure, and they were taught in such a way that I felt more inspired to swim in the icy cold outdoor swimming pool that we had next to the art block in the winter, and then sit and listen in the warm art block to learn by rote lectures about Cézanne and Monet and Rembrandt. But César Manrique, I'll leave a link to on the show page. Now, his installations were stunning because they didn't just sit in art galleries or in dusty tomes. They were part of, and they took you into the world to be at one with them. And I know that sounds all a bit colloquialism now, arty-farty, but it's true. Sometimes you are actually inside them. His, and I think greatest work, and a fantastic example of this, was the Jamios del Agua, Caves of Water. And I'm going to quote again, but from his website this time. This was the first centre for art, culture and tourism created by César Manrique, and one of the clearest examples of harmony between art and nature. Get this, by the way, and I am about to drop the A word, and you know what a big deal that is for me. The artist, César, used the inside of a volcanic tunnel to create a natural auditorium of extraordinary beauty. And if you've ever been to Lanzarote and you've never been to this place, book a ticket now, get straight back there. Because within this space that he created was a garden of palm trees and an artificial lake and a volcanology centre of scientific and cultural interest. There's a cinema right in the depths of the lava flow, which is quite incredible. And to get there, you go through a church-like cave with icy cold water that probably fed our school swimming pool, that had a teeny tiny white crab. Actually, it's a squat lobster, but it was always called a crab when I visited, that I don't think you see anywhere else in the world. It's called the, standby, Monidopsis polymorpha, and is endemic to Lanzarote. They're small, these crabs, stroke lobsters, small and blind and pale, no larger than, I think even smaller than a 1 cent, 1 penny coin. And they live in these lava tubes formed by volcanic eruptions on the island 15,000 years ago. And within this world that you can visit that he created, his art is also exhibited that talks much about his love for the island. A lot of it is very contemporary, very abstract. But honestly, I was completely hooked by it, because you had this power of volcanic destructive beauty alongside static spaces that leave you, frankly, more breathless than Joanna Randall saying she'd dance with you at the school disco. And living art also in this place, if you think about the crabs and the lobsters, literally crawling through this experience, an experience you'll not have anywhere else on this planet. Now that, stand by, I'm going to use it, is awesome. And today we talk about nature, we talk about photographing it, we talk about art. My guests talk about their love for this amazing world that we live in.
Today on the Photowalk.
I mean, we can feel rage sometimes. We can feel so much sorrow, but the thing is we come from another angle, and I think all the different angles has purpose, but for us it comes from love rather than anger.
Stories of life told by photographers, and today those stories come from Matthias and Aris Alexandrov Klum, the adventure and surf photographer Chris Burkhardt, the most incredible portrait and murmurations photographer, it seems, Søren Sulkier, the mentor Anna Hardy, a good selection like a Boxer quality street of extra milers, and you. It's a unique special kind of podcast made from the letters you send in and the thoughts you have about making pictures, whatever and whoever you make them for, whether you're a full-time pro or somebody who just takes great pleasure in being a collector of life in whatever box you carry, be it a DSLR, a mirrorless, a box brownie, or maybe even, as our guests will carry today for some of their work at least, and certainly Mr. Burkhardt would too for surfing with his kit, a box within a box, i.e. underwater housing for your precious machines, or maybe you just like to use a smartphone. That's fine too. This is a show about how making pictures makes you feel, what it does for us and others. 6.6 billion people, I say, have a chance to make a picture with something, so we're not walking alone. You don't have to be a tech expert to be able to walk with us, making our pictures and reading our letters. In the mailbag today, why a surfboard is like a camera. Yes, I did say surfboard. Multi-talented community members who can sing for their supper too. The truth about the British obsession with getting up early to put towels on holiday sun loungers. Going on a software diet, a new phrase on me that one, letting go of Adobe, templates to download for free, 2 thoughts on imposter syndrome today, inspirational books you must have, courtesy of our extra milers, and when is a photo not a photo? Shall we walk then? Checklist out, coffee and Garibaldi's packed, check, boots on and laced, check, walking trousers or shorts and make them waterproof for all the walking around in nature that we're going to talk about. Check. Spare batteries, check. Memory cards or spare film, check. Earbuds in, check. Lens caps off. Let's walk. Alongside the steps, and there's a faint rumble of traffic in the distance. I'm not sure it picks that up. Oh, and an aircraft just going ahead, right on cue. You'll also hear the extendable lead that Barney is tied to. We are in a woodland where there's lots of deer, so I just thought today we'd have Barney tethered just in case. It's a much longer lead. It's an 8 meter retractable one. He chewed through his 5 meter one only last week, and that was that. They're expensive retractable leads. It's very expensive actually, or been an expensive week. So Barkalot went to the vets this time last week, and you can hear about that story on last week's Extra Mile. Light and shade. If you are even thinking about buying new kit at the moment, I'd like you to stop in your tracks and consider the circular economy. Today's about sustainability in many ways, and the circular economy is obviously a part of that. If you're buying quality used camera kit and being kind to our planet, then mpb.com is the perfect place to start. And I'm not just saying that because the wonderful people there support this show. I'm saying it because it's a service that I actively use. The X100V that I hold in my hand and made that first sketchbook image to start the show today comes from MPB, Neil? Yes, MPB. The wide angle lens adapter that is on the front of the camera that I used to photograph at the start of today's show is from where, do you think? MPB, Neil? Ah, you're good. MPB, yes. Even the power adapter that I can plug into the car when I've been less than responsible with my charging at home comes from MPB, Neil? Ah, no, not that one, actually. It would have been, and I thought to look. And that's the point about guiding you to mpb.com. It's not just cameras, it's not just lenses, But it's tripods, it's bags, it's drones, it's the stuff that you need to go out into the world and make your wonderful photographs. So if you buy, sell, or want to trade camera kit and you live in America, the UK, or Europe, then mpb.com is the place to go for your kit needs for quality and also price. And, as I say, plenty of ands. Buying this way, you're part of the circular economy, and sustainability, as I say, being more important than ever. This is one of the key reasons that I'm thrilled that they're here with us. Go to mpb.com. Where are we, Barnes? I think we've got lost, haven't we? Left and right and left and right already. I've no idea where we are. Let's keep walking, Barnes. Life's an adventure. Here he comes. Come on. There we go. You lead the way. He looks a bit unsure. We're coming to a clearing, or rather a T-junction in the path here. What should we do? We've never been to this part of the woods before. He looks entirely disinterested, just wants to sniff something. So, first letter. Where do we start? We're going to start with Johan Otterdal Edfeldt. Hassan, Neil. Hassan? Is that the way you say it? Hassan. Hassan? Oh, Neil. A crumbly version of Swedish. So yes, we're into a bit of Swedish after copious franglais last week on the show. I'm still enjoying your photo walks every Friday, says Johan. Perfect to listen to when travelling around. Fun van life stories. Yes, we haven't talked about van life for a while. I am actually going to the... get this. Oh, Neil. You're not going to say you're going to the caravanning and motorhomes show at the NEC in Birmingham in a couple of weeks, are you? Oh, you read my mind. Yes, I am. I'm still very keen on that life. I'm going to dream. I'm going to go and touch the vans. Oh. And I'm not taking my credit card. Anyway, fun van life stories, he says, and recently even some surf talk. My kind of show. Yes, we talked about surf photography as well. Of course we have. Oh, look at this. The light bursting. I know it's a lot of light bursting through trees pictures today on the show page from me. In fact, I think there's going to be more links than there are pictures on the show page today. It's a link-heavy show, this one. Lots of information if you go to the show page. Let me just grab this. We got some high pines here. Are they pines? Yeah. Hold on. Let me get my camera. If I go to F8, I might be able to get a better starburst from that sun coming through the trees. I don't know. I think I've got it. F8, 1/2/5, ISO 400. Yeah, I think so. We'll have a look. Barnes brilliant, by the way. Look at you, just sitting there. Come on. He sits now while I make a photograph. I know he didn't at the start of the show, but often he does. It's like, look, I'll sit here, wait patiently, don't take too long. Don't you dare get your tripod out. We have a tripod show coming up. He won't like that week. Maybe we won't go on that week together, Barnes. And just sits and lets me make my photos now. You're so patient, Barnes. Anyway, back to the letter. Yes, I'm still enjoying the podcast every Friday. Surfboard, says Johan, are like cameras. Oh, really, Johan? Explain. Yaskar, says Johan. I will. Well, there are thousands of different types, styles, and equipment, and it can get very nerdy, but also a bit territorial. And locals can get quite antsy with you. I've been involved in some very loud verbals with surfers in the Canaries and France and Sri Lanka and New Zealand. Really? See, I thought all you lot were just chilled and hanging just out to sea, waiting for the wave, not getting all funny about who's got the biggest board or whatever it is that you rough and tumble about. So like cameras, says Johan, there's lots of varieties. For example, my surfboards range from 5'4" to 9'2". Some have single fin, others 2, maybe 3. Then you have concave and convex, and dozens of different tails and noses. Johan, who knew? See, I thought it was really one board. Okay, maybe different lengths, granted, and a fin or two's difference, but it looks like there's loads of different kinds. I suppose there's even these sort of the Leica lover of the surfboard. What would be the Leica of the surfboard world? Johan, what would be the one where somebody says, "Oh, you've got the red dot surfboard you have? Blimey." By the way, says Johan, and obviously pointing to my mention of the towels on sunbeds from the summer show, which seems so long ago now as the autumn is upon us and the colder mornings are in. Sunbeds, he says, are a crazy, crazy British sport. I think they are. I worked, says Johan, in a hotel for a year in Fuerteventura, which is another Canarian island, where 50% just across actually from Lanzarote, you can see it from the beach, where 50% were British and the other side of the hotel was Scandinavian. It had 2 different pool areas. The Scandinavians, oh no, I feel I'm going to feel ashamed of my fellow nationals in a moment, had no towels in the morning complaints at all. And the British side, it was full of towels on the sunbeds. Quite early in the morning, I'm sure. Our one, what was it, 5 a.m. you had to be out there. Ridiculous, honestly. But still, he said, the Brits would complain, to the tune of 20 or so complaints a week. And always about the German residents putting out towels and making loud noises at night. Now, I must say at this point, we had not one single German tourist staying here. Just saying. I think you just have. Oh, on behalf of all British tourists that lay down towels and make ridiculous complaints when there's none to be made at all, I hereby apologise. Anyway, enough of Towelgate. We did a few months in our van this winter and spring from Sweden to the south of Spain, with a month in Portugal and a few days in France and Germany. Johan, where do I get a life like yours? Great, great photography trip, he says, and wonderful memories. And this winter, we're going to be back in... Oh, you're very noisy. Back in New Zealand for 5 months, road tripping. I'd love the 150 600mm for the trip, but I'm afraid I can't afford it. Johan, you know what I'm going to say. mpb.com, sir. MPB. Now, this part I love, by the way, and although I guess it will be hard for many who don't like to change their lenses for different throw and different reasons, Johan says, get this, I'm still on my 1 camera, 1 lens, 1 year project. Okoloi. I sound like a Brummie ordering a plate of something spicy. Can I have an okoloi, please? I'm sorry, Brummies. That was terrible, wasn't it? But you kind of know where I'm going with that. I have 5 months left with an 18mm f2 lens on a Fuji camera, only shooting in black and white and making square pictures for a year. A real mind opener to see what's possible with my least liked lens and an old XE1. They're both turning 10 years old this year. What a great way to celebrate with them. And that's a fantastic project. 1 camera, 1 lens, 1 year. I tell you what, I'm borrowing that from you, and because I haven't used my X Pro 1 much with my 28mm Yashica lens, which was a fantastic gift only a couple of years ago. But I should do that next year, because you don't have to I can't just have 1 camera all year with me. That would be daft because of all the different things I do. But I can certainly just have that camera in the bag, or just take that out on certain expeditions. 1 camera, 1 lens, 1 year. And I won't, because I do have other lenses for it, but I just won't change it. That'll be it. I'm borrowing your idea, if you don't mind. Photography, he says, is the best medicine, and without it, I would have been very, very down for the last 2 years during COVID. Some good news, though. I feel very lucky to have won Swedish Photographer of the Year. What? You didn't tell me that. Well, you are now. And it's in Sweden's biggest photography magazine, Camera and Build. I know it. Congratulations. I was hoping that I would read on in your letter and say that they offered you any 1 lens you could possibly have, and you chose the one that you wrote about a moment ago. But no, that wasn't to be. But you do have other skills. Clearly, I know you're a great surfer. When I looked at your website, I didn't realise that you were also a decorated surfer. But a great surfer, a great photographer, and also your skills know no bounds, Johan. You're a fine musician as well. He says, if you'd like some music to play on the show, you're more than welcome to use any of my songs, with a smiley emoji. You'll find me as a different name. I am Jonah Lake on Spotify. See, everybody has to have a stage name when it comes to music. Maybe Sail On, which is about love for the ocean. See, that would be good. Or Neverland, love for New Zealand. Or Mother Earth, a love for the beauty in the world. And I'm currently working on a photography song. Well, that one, I really want to hear. That one, can we have that as a theme? Maybe we could have that as the 2023 theme song to the show. Come on, Neil, you're getting above your station here. He's only offered you a few songs. Don't go commissioning him. Not for free anyway. Yes, you're quite right. But yeah, I had no idea you were quite as prolific across all media. We have a talented bunch of folk here, don't we, in this community? I'm very proud of you. Pointing your cameras at the world, but not just your cameras, your songwriting abilities and everything else too. Anyway, finally, says Johan, I'm sending you a portrait that I took on the streets a few weeks ago. From the moment I saw the guy that we're featuring on the show page today, to the moment I took the picture, it was less than 1 minute, and I'd never met him before in my life. Now, if you go to the show page, you may just think, oh, that's not necessarily a guy I would ask for a portrait from. And actually, I think this is a really interesting topic, all of itself. The people we would and wouldn't approach if we were trying a little street portraiture. Perhaps you could, I'd be very interested actually. Can you send me your thoughts on that? And in particular, after you've gone to today's show page and had a look at the picture that we're talking about here. So, Johan, 3 times. Lots of things to think about here. I have a reply before I play an inspirational clip from a former guest. Numero uno, or in Swedish, nummer ett. I will link to your Spotify page on the show page today. Nummer två, I think it is. Which I know sounds like we've leapt some numbers, but we're still only at 2. Barney, come out of there. You don't know what's in there. There we go. Good boy. Nummer, where were we? Två. I'll link to your 1 camera, 1 lens, 1 year project, which I think you can tell by my enthusiasm that I'm exceptionally inspired by. Nummer tre. I shall pop that portrait on the show page as promised. Did I say that just now? Maybe I did. Nummer, now how do I say this one? Fulla. The playout song today will be one of yours. You can find out which one in a short while, but I was absolutely, I don't use the word gobsmacked. It's not really, it's kind of an 80s word that I never really got into. A colleague of mine in radio used to have a feature called the Gobsmackers, but I suppose, yeah, this could be a gobsmacker. It was a fantastic song. Nummer 5. I am sending you a flask to take on your New Zealand adventure. Nummer 6, which is even spelt that way, yes, one for the kids to titter about in the car. You have inspired the inspirational clip that I'm going to play in a moment, which has to come from Chris Burkhardt, who was on episode 296, talking about, it was about a TED Talk that he'd done where he spoke about photographing in the freezing cold winds and seas. And you mentioned at the start, Johan, that you quite liked the surfing photography stories that we've had on the show. But he talks about these freezing cold seas as being, and this would be the last word I would use for it, meditative. There's always too many t-t-t-s in. Meditative, thank you. But the freezing cold seas, I always imagined most surfers would probably say, not today, mate, I'm plaiting my dreads. But here's Chris Burkhardt, adventuring surfing photographer.
It's funny because you mentioned the TED Talk, so I'll jump into that, but my whole, shtick was basically like, if suffering is a shortcut to mindfulness, then I would consider myself a monk, because I think that I've tried to thrust myself into a lot of situations where that is the case. And I know that might seem like a masochistic approach, but it's really not. It's not about masochism at all. It's about finding that understanding that in those environments, you do become more mindful, you become more aware, you're more aware of your surroundings when they can kill you. You're more aware of, the image when you have a limited time frame to make it happen, to make it work. There's a lot more that becomes top of mind when you're thrust into the here and now. And I can't think of a better thing to thrust you into the here and now than harsh and inclement weather or a hostile environment. And I don't mean hostile like it's trying to harm you, but I just mean hostile like when the moments are good, they're so good. And in that moment that they last just a very, very little amount of time. And that's special to me.
That's Chris Burkhardt. And before that, the letter from Johan. Thank you, Johan. Oh, such a lot of information and things to start the show with today. And well done. Fantastic news upon winning that photographic competition as well. I love to hear about those leaps forward that you make. So do please write to me. The email address for the show is stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. Now, shall we walk through during the summer when I've got Barnes with me, I don't like to walk through the ferns because we do have an adder. Well, not so much problem, but we do have adders. Which small dogs and adders don't get on too well. So I don't know. We're not quite into the season where they've yet hibernated. I think we've still got quite a mild September going into October. Where are we now? Are we in October? Yes, we are. October. Oh, where do these months go? Right, a couple of letters that have not come with pictures for the show page. As I say, today there's quite a lot of inspirational links worth following on the show page, so do go there. I know people who say they sit down with a coffee after they've listened to the show in the evening and they follow the links on the show page to all these places. It becomes one of those what do they call them? Rabbit holes, doesn't it? But I'm very pleased that you do. So yes, some letters that have not come with pictures, but I'd like to read ahead of my conversation with photographic artist duo today. We'll start with Sven Visnos from Norway land, but now living in Brazil. I hope nobody else is listening in the woodland. Look around me with embarrassment as somebody comes around the corner any moment. I can never say Brazil without singing the theme tune from the Terry Gilliam film. Very, very strange film, the Terry Gilliam Brazil film. It's one of those late Friday nights with your favourite Poison kind of movies. It really is. It's bizarre, it's strange. It's. I think you've made your point, Neil. Do go watch it. Come this way, pups. That's a very deep lake there. It's one of those lakes where they go swimming. Oh, not sure I want to go swimming in that. Ugh. Looks far too cold. Pups, come on, come this way. No, we're not going in that. I am, by the way, Sven, upset that I shall not be skiing in your birthplace of Norway at the start of next year. We've been going to Norway, well, not counting obviously the pandemic year and a bit, for many, many years. See, mother-in-law has shipped us off to Austria land, which of course I'm very thankful for, obviously. Although where we go in Norway, which I absolutely adore for its peace, its tranquility, and the fact that Norwegians are not posers on the slopes. They don't need to be. They are literally born on these bits of wood. And so therefore they effortlessly shoosh down the slopes. Not a care in the world, not having to show off, not necessarily wearing the season's latest clothing. They are just happy in themselves. And I love that about Norway and Norwegian skiing. And Austria is, and I'm sorry for those that live in Austria land, but I think the slopes can be slightly more posy, let's just say. And I am in dread of the place that we're going to, because it looks like you have to be a very, very good skier as well. There are more reds than those shown in a Millwall-West Ham derby. Sorry for the English football reference, which will mean nothing to you, Sven, anyway. Suffice to say, all my ill-fitting orange ski pants that make me look like I'm working as a, local refuse collector will probably serve as a fairly good beacon for the posers to stay clear of. Anyway, I digress. Hi there, my name is Sven Visnos. I don't mind if you get it right or wrong, I'm used to it. Well, I did look it up, Sven. I went to look up some pronunciations of how to pronounce the surname, which is not as straightforward as it's spelt. I'm a Norwegian, but live in the mountains of... Shall I do it again? No, I was going to do the Brazil shout, but there's 2 dog walkers up ahead, and they may think I'm a proper Charlie. But I live in the mountains of Brazil between Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. Sounds wonderful, fantastic area for photography. My own photographic journey started when I was 15 years old. I bought an Olympus OM2N with lots of saved up pennies. During the years, it became a dear hobby, and I was even able to use it for work sometimes. Even more important, I was able to use the knowledge in what became my profession eventually, which is broadcast TV and film. Oh, another multi-talented member of our community. You never told me before, Sven. Well, I've never written to you before, Neil. Well, that'll be why then. Anyway, over the last few years, and I like this as a concept, I think, I've been going on a diet when it comes to the amount of software that's in my life. And I am now I use them, and I quite like the software, but I understand those that will cheer when you hear Sven say, he is Adobe free. My RAW processor now is Capture One, and my editing program is Affinity Photo. Now, I know those who aren't necessarily photographers. Barney, what are you digging in there for? That's a rabbit hole. No, come on. I know those who aren't necessarily photographers. Come this way, come on. Are now getting a nosebleed with thinking, hang on, that sounds like Tech Talk, Neil. You promised that I didn't have to be too technically savvy. Bear with us just for this mail. As I was exploring one of the Instagram functions, the carousel, I thought there must be a better way to make the slides that you use in a carousel, because I've been using the carousel to show my panoramas that I make. So I ended up making some templates that remove all the complexity, the difficult thing. Templates that give you a completely seamless carousel as well. It uses Affinity Photo, which is a piece of software I'm hearing more and more about. You see, the thing is, the irony is, though, Sven, if I add that, then I'm collecting software. And I thought this was a mail about doing the opposite. It's something I created for myself, but I thought others in the community may enjoy it as well. So if you want to let your listeners know, you can point them to there's a website address which I will point you towards, and you can see how he's doing it and get a copy of that program, I suppose. Would it be program? Yes. Templates, not program. What am I talking about? Template. You can download a template. But if you want to see a carousel that I made with it, I'll also include a link for that as well, because he's given us a particular Instagram link that you can follow. Regards from Sven. I shall put the links on the show page today, and I have to say, very, very generous of you to share. And then from Brazil, hold the song, we go to the land of redbacks hiding under the toilet seat. Nick Leach. Hello, Neil. I've titled this letter, Hello, My Friend, as like many people, I'm sure your voice is a friend that we listen to, we love to listen to. He said that, not me, every week. Nick, I'm going to have to hide behind the sofa while I read this. Quick, roll out the self-derogatory terms and expression. I've just connected through Vero, and I'm hoping there's a future community here for fellow Photowalk peeps, because I'm not on Facebook, so I can't participate there. Yes, we have our Facebook group, which I'll doubtless tell you about a little bit later on. But what a nice thought to do that on Vero. I wonder whether we could do that. Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, it's a different kind of mechanic to having a group on Facebook. I shall put that to those that know far more about this kind of thing than me. There we go. Nicely delegated. I loved your story, says Nick, the other week about your first job cleaning cars while your friends were at the beach. I was the same, and like you, my first job was cleaning cars, and I do enjoy it now. I've got to admit, I don't really clean the cars in our house now. No, Sam likes it, and she actually sees it as part of a sort of keep fit regime. Really, honestly. I know you're raising your eyebrows at me now. I can see you, but she does. You must come to Sydneyland, he says, for a photo retreat. So many beautiful areas we could go to. God, we'd be there for years. I mean, so many just there. We've got to tour the whole of the country. Lastly, on the topic often spoken about on the show, the dreaded imposter syndrome, I wanted to offer a different perspective. All right, Nick, read on. Imposter syndrome is important as it keeps you grounded and it reminds you that there is always more to learn and we can always do better. Imagine what the alternative is, says Nick. What's important is to recognize when you feel this and ask yourself the question, how can I be better? What could I do maybe differently? This is progress, and this is what makes humanity great. Loving the Extra Mile shows. People, if you're not one, he says, sign up, it's well worth it. He said that. I love the story of the sword in Croquembouche. I was laughing for hours. Yes, it was true, absolutely true story. Please say hi to Car and Sabarkalot for me. I will. Sabarkalot, Bonnie, Pups, Pups. He's looking, see? Lots of different names. Finally turn around to Pups. Still answers to Pups. Nick says hello, by the way. Nick, I'm sorry to say, he's more interested in the bush that he's currently sniffing. Don't go in there. Come on. There we go. Good boy. I know I mentioned Sabarkalot, his trip to the vets at the start of the show today, but if you have any advice on making a cockapoo a much less fussy eater, I would be very, very interested to hear from you. Please, any advice taken. Anyway, that's from Nick, who is a Kiwi living in Australia land. See, all these people that come from different countries that go to live in other countries. Marvellous. And I did talk about Lanzarote at the start of the show, and I often wonder, because I did love the island, and I did enjoy my time there, but I'm a bit of a home pigeon. And but I do wonder sometimes, what might have happened had I stayed living on the islands of the Canary Islands? Because I made many friends there, both Canarian and English. Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it, when people move to different countries? And we meet so many of you writing into this show that have done exactly that. So thank you so much for your email, Nick. Right, inspiration from previous guests in, not quite so much a bite-sized form for this one. Let's go way back to episode 176 to hear from Søren Solker, who is a Danish photographer. Famous, very famous, for his outstanding, beautiful portraits of, often the rich and famous. Not necessarily all rich and famous, but many of them are if you go to look at his website. But equally, and in keeping with the nature we are talking about today, he made and makes these incredible starling murmurations. But this story that I'm about to play you that he told on that episode, number 176, really shines a light on how you can be struck by a project that you weren't expecting in the slightest. And, in his case, that was photographing birds, not just one or two at a time out the opening of a hide that we talked about in last week's program, but thousands flying in formation that make the work for his incredible book and exhibitions and installations, actually, called Black Sun. This is Søren Solker.
I grew up in the south of Denmark and on the west coast, so the southwest coast in the marshlands down there. There's every spring and every autumn, there's a few 100,000 starlings that gather in to eat prior to their migration.
Yeah.
south and west. Some of them actually go to England, and some go further down.
We get them close to where we are, but not in the number that I've seen you photograph them.
No. Well, my parents took me to see this phenomenon a couple of times when I was a kid, and I was really, really fascinated by it. And I'd never, that was probably 40 years ago. And then a couple of years ago, when I just finished, I had a big 25-year retrospective at the National Portrait Gallery in Denmark, in an old castle, where I put all my portraits from the last 25 years together in a huge show and a book. And I decided now I want to do a project that's not portraits. And then that image, that mental image came back to me of these shapes that I'd seen as a kid.
Yeah.
So I took out a week from my calendar and I drove down south. It took me 4 years to do about 100 images. So it doesn't happen very often, the very dramatic thing that now when you look at my book, most people will be disappointed if they go out and see it by themselves, because I think 70% of the images from my book are probably from 5 or 6 nights out of more than 100 nights.
Wow.
So a lot of things have to be right for this to happen. You need the right kind of weather, you need a lot of birds, and then you need some predator birds, like falcons who attack the big flocks of starlings, and that's when you really get these amazing shapes.
Is that what is happening when you get these incredible? It's almost like, it feels like material folding back on itself. Is that what's happening? The predator birds are closing in at those moments.
Yeah, you get these black waves running through the flock, and the shapes is constantly shifting. It's absolutely amazing when it happens. And during that first week that I had set aside for doing this project, or that's what I thought it would be, I managed to get, I think, one image. I have a small print of it here on my wall. Just show you. I managed to get one image that I was happy with. It's this one.
It's like a flying fish to me.
Yeah, it looks like maybe a manta ray or a head of a bird.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, I thought, wow, imagine if I could get 5 of this quality. That's both a beautiful shape, it resembles something else, it looks like Japanese calligraphy almost, or ink painting, ink drawing. I was hooked, basically. I thought I had to go back. So this was in the springtime, and the birds were still around. So then a week after, I went down there again, got 1 or 2 more images that I felt were something, but then the birds left, and then it was summer. I had to wait for autumn for them to come back again. From then on, the next 2 years, I went back spring and autumn, and I spent much time there. And then I started knowing all the different places, and I started thinking about, where do these birds go when they leave Denmark? I know in the springtime they go all over the place, and they're more spread out. They're just nesting during that period. But in the wintertime, they stay together. So I started in the winters following them. I started researching. Actually, Instagram was very helpful. I started following certain hashtags with the name of starlings in many different languages, the name of starling memoration. Like, it seems like every language has a totally different name. In some languages, it's a storm. In some, it's a dance. In Denmark, we call it sort sol, which is black sun, which I've called the book.
Which you've called the book, yeah. That's Søren Solke, and I'll link, of course, to that episode in the show notes today. It's beautiful this morning. It's still quite crisp, not as crisp as it's going to get, I know. I've got one fleece layer at the moment. I'm ready though. I'm ready for the winter to come. It's. I think we're going to have a chilly one. How do you know, Neil? How can you say that? I think we're going to have a chilly one. Where's your science in that? Good point. I've just got that feeling in my bones. Right, let me introduce you. Oh, by the way, you're listening to the Photowalk, which is a strange thing to say, I know, halfway through a show, which you can see the title to. But just so that if you're new to these parts and you've been listening along thinking, what's all this about then? It's where I take a bunch of letters out that have been sent into the show, often with their emails, but I call them letters because I like the analog feel to that. Often with pictures that have been supplied as well. And if you are sending pictures in 2,000 pixels wide, please, if you can resize them. But don't worry if you can't. Send them in and I'll do the legwork for you. Or if you're sending in from your smartphone, because they count too, best camera, the one you have in your hand at the time, blah, 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 then just make sure you send them in best quality, please. Right, yes. Let me introduce my guests for this week's edition. Stand by for the longest introduction, but I think it's important because it took me a while, as I mentioned at the start of the show, even researching their work and then doing the interview and then editing it and then listening back to it again yesterday to realise that perhaps I had unpicked their work entirely incorrectly and incoherently at times. Heavens, Neil, how on earth did you do that? I know you like your research, I do, but I'll tell you, I thought that, like many great photographers and artists that depict a battle with nature, that this interview I was about to do with them was all about that as well, obviously. And I wrote some questions out for two people, two artists, two photographers who make pictures of this planet, the one that spins 1,000 miles an hour, that you and I are currently clinging to. I wrote questions for them that talked about their projects as a way to sort of course correct our thinking, a bit like the wonderful David Attenborough in many ways. And I thought that our chat would sort of follow their lines, really, or those lines. I thought we'd talk about we as in being big business or big leaders or just us throwing stuff into the sea or wasting resources. I thought that's perhaps where we would lead with a conversation. When I missed the whole essence of, I think, the fact that they both deal in a currency that's far more important, far more beneficial, far more potent, far more investable, if you like, because it's artwork as well. And that is a 4-letter word: love. Neil, have you been listening to your John Lennon tapes again? No. Hear me out. We talk much on this show about immersion, don't we? About being in the environment. I'm in the environment now. About removing yourself from the noise, from the clatter, even the clutter of everyday life. That's what this podcast is all about, really. Going back to the moment I was telling you about the podcast a moment ago, that's what this podcast became. It started out as a series of mainly interviews, but it became this photo walk. It became this just amble through it's often the wilds. We've done some urban ones, but it's often you and I escaping. That's the essence of what I hope this program brings. The photo walk, it's a walk, it's you, it's me, it's a camera. And sometimes making pictures we're really happy with, other times simply scrapbooking, but always being connected with something other than a desk or a chair or what else do you get? A spreadsheet, yes. A concept that, look, even if you do listen to this show on the famous Hudson line at 8:15, bound for Grand Central, you should hopefully feel in your ears, if not always feet, that that connection with the outside world is what this show's all about. And it took 2 hours of editing, a 40 minutes chat, into the 20-minute or so interview that it's become, for me to understand that love is the key component of this conversation that we were having. If you love the pictures that you're making, if you love the places that you walk through, you're more likely to look after it, and also the people around you. So today, two photographers who refer to themselves as an artist duo, really. It's teamwork. And that's important to remember because they will reference it. Matthias Klum and Aris Alexandrov, who are together the duo Alexandrov Klum. They make work that is, here comes that I word, immersive. It's not simply a photograph. It's not simply a sketch. It's not simply a piece of video or film. It's not simply sound. It's not simply music. It's all of those things. It's what, and I was always bound to mention it within our conversation, though it happens within the first 4 minutes, it's what left me absolutely inspired to the very core, and I genuinely mean this, when I went to see Salgado's most recent exhibition, Amazonia, at London's Science Museum. So inspired and so awestruck was I that my friends from the Gambia who were there, and I think I eyeballed, I completely ignored them, all those thousands of miles away, and all I could see was the pictures and the story that I was immersed in. So my apologies, Helen and Jason from the Gambia, who were there that day. I thought, when I saw you, Helen, I'm sure it was you in the lift. I'm sure we exchanged glances, and I think you thought, I must be Neil, but he's being really miserable, he's not waving at me, so it can't be Neil. Anyway, it was the soundtrack of nature that, in that exhibition, that honestly had me feel I was nowhere near London at all. And it runs through the work of this duo and their desire to connect with nature and share ideas on how to live with it and love it. But they don't preach. Something Salgado didn't do either. They don't chastise you. They don't get angry. They invite you, and stand by to go into the lotus position now. They invite you to meditate with them through their art. Steady on, Neil. It's far too early to grab me yoga pants. What have you got there, Barney? No, that's a bone. You can't have that. No, that's brittle. Come on, play the game. You're on a lead, mate. You're never going to win this one. Give it to me. Come on. Go on, good boy. Come on, this way. No, I've thrown it in there. Don't go back looking for it. Barney, come on, this way. There we go. Their work isn't just... pull it back from the yoga pants, Neil. Their work isn't just multimedia, as in sound and pictures and film and so on. It does incorporate music and art installations, and really any way you can think of to help you understand nature and what we're doing with it and to it. They have this mindful approach, but also their conversation that they hope you will experience by seeing their work is about you. It's about finding solace in the world, enjoying it, being a part of it. Like when I mentioned Cesar Manrique right at the start of the programme today. Their work is about you being in the pictures. Not necessarily their pictures, but the pictures you make. I think I'm at last getting this, Neil. When you're out and about, falling in love with nature. Yeah, that would have been a much quicker introduction. Look, I'm going to link, of course, to their website. And, in this world that we live in of fast food and TikTok, perhaps I'm sounding a bit woo-woo, but it's because I've really immersed myself in their work over the last few weeks. So I'll link to it on the show page that accompanies this edition, which is linked to in the app here, so you can also experience their work. But I'm hoping our chat will add to that experience when you do go and look at what they do. And I'm hoping it will have you think about the multi dimensions and media available to us now storytelling, even if it does mean simply whipping out your iPhone to record 2 or 3 minutes of a brook bubbling through a valley that's going to accompany the pictures that you've made of the fields below. So usually I separate an interview, a conversation, into 2 halves, but I'm keeping this one as one part. Well, one part and a little bit extra toward the end of the show. Matthias and Iris, otherwise known now since they became not just an artist duo, but a duo in life too, otherwise known as Alexandrov Klum.
Very rarely have I sincerely not known where to start with a conversation, so I simply want to read some words that you wrote. The future of our planet depends upon taking responsibility and shifting our behaviour patterns to live in harmony with nature and society. Now, I know it's not your official mission statement, but it seems a good place to start. With so much to learn about and put right when it comes to our approach to nature, I wonder where you even think you should start.
So these days, I think our main focus is to raise awareness starting with ourselves. I think it's easy to think that we have the answers when looking at science or when looking at the state of the world right now. But we are in a position right now when we're trying to find new ways of approaching the way we look at nature.
Does that include where you choose to live? Because you live, I mean, I get the benefit of seeing this beautiful studio that you're in Spain, which is near Andalusia, I think, isn't it? And you've made the choice to, I think, spend most of your time in Spain rather than Stockholm, which is where your other base can be in Sweden. Is that a conscious decision as well? Because I can see outside your window and it's beautifully green and lush and sort of fits, I think, your remit.
Yeah, we try to cherish, we try to walk the talk in a sense. We try to live close to nature, really feeling nature. This might sound very hippie-ish, but to us, it's really a big change where we really embrace nature and we try to get that across in our artworks, in our projects, and in our storytelling. So if we would be living in the middle of, let's say, Stockholm, we're pretty far from the stories we want to tell.
Yeah. Are you in some way ecologists, or are you photographers and artists? I'm just because I think it's a close line here now, isn't it? You've sort of moved from artistry into living in the environment.
Well, I think it has different sides. Moving somewhere where you don't know the language and parts of the culture makes you new in a sense. You have to refigure out the nature around you. And I think this move from us, spending more time in Spain than in Sweden, has been really important for the sense of making us a bit more humble.
I think it's about vulnerability in a sense. I mean, we love to explore, we love to see new places, but I mean, I come from a world of National Geographic photography. That's my background for 21 years. I was a contract photographer, and that's the, if I may say so, old-fashioned way of exploring nature. It has been done since 1888, and it's a legacy. The way we do it in our duo, I would say, is an even more humble approach to what we have in front of the camera, in front of us as storytellers. So, yeah, I think we're explorers, not necessarily geographically all the time, but artistically we try to explore. Emotionally, we try to explore.
And philosophically as well.
So what is your artwork? What are you producing? What is your outlet now? How would you define it?
Well, we tend to create experiences rather than two-dimensional artworks hanging on a wall. And that would include installations, large-scale photography. We use sound almost as much as photography and film.
Yeah, big projections. Basically, really, we love large-scale, almost one-to-one perspectives where the viewer can be sort of hopefully embraced by the artwork or by the feeling that we want to produce or present. So it's hard. It's sometimes hard to explain because we could say multidimensional.
Well, I think I understand it more probably since going to, and I don't know whether you were lucky enough to go to this. We had it in London, the Salgado exhibition, where you were immersed, absolutely immersed in this experience of being within his world. And it was, and I know, Aris, you mentioned the sound a moment ago, and I realise that's a very important part of your work in particular, that you felt like you were in these jungles. Would it be almost daft to say I could almost feel the rain on the back of my neck sometimes? It was the noises, it was the people, it was mixed with these fantastic large black and white images, and that's what I think this is your world as well, isn't it? This is what you put together when you're exhibiting.
Yes, I think so. I think talking about being explorers, we tend to go back to the same space and explore that space for long periods of time. And we have, quite a new approach to that since we started working together, and that is trying to put ourselves in this mindful states using meditation or just sitting in silence. And although we work together and we're at the same spot, we have cameras and record sounds, we tend to be in this world, but in our own little world, and time flies. And we bring back that material and we try to make a world of that very experience that we had of that space. And I think that's the significance of our our work today, what you can really recognize our work in is trying to bring back that experience to the audience and adding the sounds and the feeling of actually being immersed in that landscape.
And I didn't feel, and sorry to mention Salgado again, but I think that there is a comparison here to be made. When I came out of that Salgado exhibition, I didn't feel that it was hopeless. I didn't feel this sense of hopelessness that I think sometimes when you go to installations, you think, oh no, this is dreadful. We are part of this. I never got to feel that with Salgado, and a lot of people said that was the point of his show, was to share this experience and make you fall in love with it, but not to make you feel a sense of hopelessness. And I wonder whether that's the same with your work when you show these incredible places you visit, whilst also trying to share this idea that we are damaging the earth.
Yeah, I think that we all know, most of us know our predicament, the challenges we're facing or that we're in the midst of. But dystopia and misanthropia is not necessarily the answer. I think we have one foot in the reality, but also we have another foot in the beauty, but also the dreamlike beauty, because quite often we are portraying the world. It's sort of a dreamlike state that we produce. It's not necessarily documentary. It's not necessarily just talking about what we scientifically can prove and that we know, but what we can sense, because there's a difference. You could talk to the greatest scientists on the planet. They will always say, yeah, this is what we know and this is what we don't necessarily know. And we love our art to be some kind of a reminder of our own vulnerability, how small we are. And yet we have this incredible power to destroy, but we also have the great ability to help once we connect our clever human mind with our emotional human heart. So we hope that our art can also inspire that notion of humility for life, in a sense.
Where do you choose where to make your stories?
Well, most of the time we work in long-term projects, as the project we've been making in Sweden right now, that's called The Search of the Soul of the Forest. That's not really only a Swedish project. It has to do with searching for some kind of essence in nature, but also trying to mystify the way we're looking at nature. So, of course, now we had an exhibition in Sweden, and that was in a castle called Läckö Slott. So there we worked very site-specific with these old, beautiful rooms where we tried to integrate the forests into those rooms.
Yeah, and I think we have a joint belief that our art should reflect both our mindsets when it comes to conservation, when it comes to philosophy, when it comes to how to have a lesser footprint on this earth. So sometimes when we are approached by a foundation or by an art buyer or an institution, you can always try to say, if they want something specific, you might say, yeah, that sounds great. Thanks for asking, but we would love to do it this way instead. So we always try to tweak it in one way or another so that it actually stays true to our beliefs in our core, and that's all about authenticity and quality to us.
Yes,
and that the mention you made of the projects in Sweden, is that the one that involves Greta Thunberg?
That's actually an editorial for the first Vogue Scandinavia issue.
Because it is the very first Vogue Scandinavia, you had the very first front cover.
Yeah, that was great, and that was more or less what we're talking about now. We had this mission to demystify the Swedish nature because it is very exotic and it is wonderful, but we're not taking care of it and preserving it the way we should.
Yeah, it was like a sustainable fashion art project where we actually said that we're not doing fashion in general. We're not that interested in that unless it's about sustainable fashion and the fact that it has a huge impact, fashion in general, on climate, on sustainability, and on ecosystems, etc. So we said, okay, if we can do this in our own way, and we called it merging with nature, we agreed, and it was a lovely project.
When I talk to photographers, and particularly when we talk about wildlife, ecology, environment, those genres, and one particular photographer is coming to mind now called Nick Brandt, and I spoke to him last year, and he makes these incredible studies of how animals live alongside us as not so happy bed partners in parts of Africa, for example. He, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying, because he does use this as a conduit, he uses anger when making his pictures. I think that's about as far from your method of working as possible, because it's more meditative to you. And there's a glorious picture of the both of you, actually. Very Lennon-esque. And I think you know the one I'm going to mention, where you set up a picture of you both naked in nature, made from either a very high dolly crane or a drone, one of the two. And I think that's more you, isn't it?
Well,
absolutely, yeah. It's spot on, actually. I mean, we can feel rage sometimes. We can feel so much sorrow. So we share Nick's sentiments, but the thing is, we come from another angle, and I think all the different angles has purpose. But for us, it comes from love rather than anger.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, that is the way we met, and that is the way we started working together. And I think through that love, it created a openness, the gap.
I mean, anger is surely contagious, but love is too. So we think that the message that people need sometimes, not to give up, but rather to muster strength and muster the powers to take on the challenges, live the challenges, and make something great out of it. Even for businesses, and entrepreneurs and innovative people, not to feel necessarily just hopelessness, but actually this is an opportunity to change the world.
Iris, I'm interested in particular because I think it's you that mainly look after this side, the sound, or have I got that wrong? The sound design of your projects. What is it about sound? Why is sound important to this?
Well, it's interesting. There are so many perspectives of that. I mean, everything starts from a vibration. Our entire universe was born, and this earth, from vibrations. Whenever the right part of our brain is vibrating towards our left, we get this feeling of comfort. There are so many perspectives of this, but I think both of us really, really like music.
Yeah.
I mean, you're an old drummer, Matthias, and I'm
very old.
I didn't realize that. I didn't realize you were a drummer.
Oh my God, not old.
A rusty drummer.
He's a very good drummer, actually. And I play the piano and the guitar, and I sing. So I think from a very early age, we both created sound spaces. We've been recording, both of us.
Yeah, it's like, we use the word multidimensional a fair bit, because we think that we add different elements to our stories and to our art that hopefully add a sensation. I mean, if you go into a rainforest, or if you're in African savanna, or if you're in any space really, and if you can add scent, have sound, you have the visual impact, you even have humidity, you can have all sorts of things that make you feel even stronger.
Yeah, I think sound is really important. Showing the project and trying to copy what we felt or what we want to enhance.
Yeah. And some of your stories are underwater as well, aren't they?
Yeah, we love to work underwater as well. Some listeners might remember Jacques Cousteau and his
very much. We talked about him recently. Yeah.
Oh, nice. So
I grew up on a diet of his programs as a lad.
No, so it's like that. But he talked sometimes about the silent world beneath the surface, and we sort of, in a way, respectfully disagree, because there are tons of noise under the surface, and so we love to bring that into context.
And also, that's of course the human perspective of having these dimmed or very low noises underneath water, because that's only what we can hear. So that means that we're only listening through our human perception.
Isn't that funny that you should mention that? Because that was my first ever experience. Now, I don't have the diving experience at all like you have, but my first experience of diving was, wow, this is much noisier down here than I thought it would be.
Yeah, and also, I mean, like you said, Iris, I mean, we like to deconstruct the way we look at nature only from a human perspective. That might sound a bit strange, but if you envision how an animal sees you, or sees nature, or sees its own environment, and how animals and trees, plants, organisms communicate, it's incredibly fascinating, of course. some of our projects take that into account, and we're inspired by that.
Well, I had no idea until I spoke to a woodland photographer that there's so much going on underneath the earth. The sort of way that the plants and the trees and the fungi are just literally talking to each other, holding hands and helping each other. It's a fascinating world, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. And we live in the midst of that, but sometimes we feel we're disconnected, maybe our language as well. I'm thinking about when we spoke to some indigenous leaders of the world in 2019.
Yes.
One of the questions we had for, kind of a recorded interview was, what is nature to you? When the translators had translated that question to the person sitting there, they were both laughing because the word nature wasn't even existing in their vocabulary of their own language.
Wow.
So that's also a construction of our Western language. It's the separation between human and nature, like two entities.
Whilst they're as one entity.
Yeah. Exactly. It's all what there is that is alive, more or less.
Yeah.
That specific project that we just mentioned really had to do with indigenous leaders and the way they see how their world is changing, and really without being listened to, the wisdom that they have there, but also the synchronicity of it was amazing, because so many leaders from different parts of the world, not communicating previously with each other, had exactly the same experience of the changing forest, the changing glacier, the changing the way that trees cannot even plentify fruit, and so many things that were synchronized, but in a sort of scary way, because many ecosystems, of course, are interlinked and they are sort of falling apart, and they are the first to see it.
And also the root to the problems, as they described it very metaphorically, is, the roots as roots to a tree, which is the human being, and the roots being our thoughts, or the way we're evaluating nature or each other. So I think, that really changed us a lot to sit with these beautiful, very, very intelligent and emotionally intelligent people who have carried this knowledge throughout generations. And we are here trying to ask them questions in our language that's not even connected to their way of seeing.
Which is fascinating. You mentioned how the animals see us, Matthias. It would be a bit amiss of me if I wasn't to mention that I'd watched a National Geo film, which is quite an old film now, where you describe what it feels like to become prey. You were in front of this just beautiful lioness who was playing with you and your camera. I think at one stage she was upside down, just looking back at you. What's that feeling like when you are hopeless, where you are powerless against nature in that fashion?
I think it's a great feeling when you survive it. The sense of vulnerability, or the sense of being hopefully humble in your approach is phenomenal, and I think key also to photographic success when it comes to habituating an animal, or at least gaining the respect so that you can get close enough. That particular situation, if I recall correctly, was an Asiatic lion, female, in India. So I had a National Geographic assignment for 3 months where I needed to find them and photograph. These are forest dwellers, so they're not as accessible as their African cousins. But, when you get that close, and when the female in this case, in a strange way, accepted me, not as prey, not as an enemy, not as something dangerous, but as you said, in a more playful manner, approached me. And the best thing I could do was usually you try to keep your distance, but it would have been sort of more dangerous for me to stand up and walk away. So I kept myself on my belly on the ground with my big lens in front of my face. And she chose to get closer and closer, and started in a very inquisitive way to sort of look at me. And at one point, she rolled over and stared at me upside down, and I had to reverse ever so slightly just to get the focal length to have the depth of field to photograph.
She didn't understand that focal length, did she? No.
She was too close for me to focus her. So, that was, but we have that. Those experiences are, I think they are incredible. And we Iris and I love to have have that opportunity to get close to both animals, but also to incredible forest ecosystems and people, of course. It's those are the necessary ingredients in our storytelling.
I do have a last question that I both want you to answer individually, but before I ask that, what projects are you currently working on?
Well, we continue working on the soul of the forests, which probably will be a continuation throughout our joint artist research. But also right now we're working on a project actually that involves Africa and kind of a new way of seeing imagery and situations when it comes to predator and prey, what we're talking about right now. That's a softer, maybe a more feminine gaze. Which is very exciting.
It is.
That's actually, we're sitting doing the 3D sketches for exhibition for that.
Is that
right now.
east, south, west, north? What part of Africa?
Mainly southern Africa, but partly also eastern Africa as well.
The duo who are Alexandrov Klum, Matthias and Iris. My thanks to them. They are returning, but not for a longer second part as we often have, but for... Well, I'm not going to tell you. Let me just leave it to the end. It's, I like to think, quite an inspirational moment from them. If you'd like to send your pictures and stories, you've heard them being exchanged from those that write in today's show already, then I'd love to hear from you. It's what drives this show. Without your letters, it's a very short photo walk, or not one at all. So send them to stories@photowalk.show. That's the email address, stories@photowalk.show. Of course, you can also message me through Vero and Instagram, but I have to say I get to the emails a little better, more productively. Is that the right word? I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say here. Pictures, if you're sending them in 2,000 pixels wide, please. If you can resize them and know how to do it, or send them to me and I'll do that legwork for you. Or you can send in your iPhone. Your other flavors are available. Your smartphone. That's the word I was trying to find. Smartphone pictures. Send them in best quality, or whatever language your phone uses. Right. My thanks to, and I want to mention them heartily now, because we met up at the start of this week on Zoom. My thanks to the extra milers who go the extra photo walk mile to support this show. For the price of a high street coffee or roll of HP5 black and white film a month, or an annual basis, you are quite frankly and honestly, say it with me, the engine room that drives this show. Or more pertinently perhaps, the boots that walk the mile. Miles. Walk the Mile, that's a different film. That's not what this is about. But thank you so much for your support. I truly appreciate it. So if you'd like to support this show, go to the photowalk.show website, click the orange button that says support the show, and then enjoy the extra weekend diary episode, which is now called The Extra Mile, although there are 100 or so episodes called More, which are broadly the same, actually. It's just under a different title that you can still go back and listen to. So there's hours and hours and hours and hours of extra content. And also, once a month, as I mentioned a moment ago, and we haven't missed one since starting this, we meet on Zoom to share pictures and just talk about this love for making pictures that we have together. And sometimes we record a few footnotes about photography. And this past week we did. I know we haven't done it for the last few. We've been too caught up in sharing our pictures, because that's what we do on our 90-minute Zoom chat. But I asked the question and recorded the answers as I have in the past. The question that I asked was, give me a book that is an absolute go-to when you need inspiration, when you want to turn the pages of something that gives you reason to get out there and make some more photographs. Or make some photographs when you feel you've had, sort of a dry period of enthusiasm or inspiration. So I thought you might like to hear a few of our extra milers and what books they go to on their shelves. And the books I'll link to today, of course.
Paul Hudson, and the book, probably my favourite at the moment, which I've just picked up off my table in my study, is The Americans by Robert Frank. And one of the reasons I love it so much is because this guy from Switzerland who went across to America and with the Guggenheim Fellowship traveled right across the US from east to west and photographed on his just small 35mm Leica in black and white, on obviously using film. I think it was in the 50s, late 50s that he did it. And I just find those images so raw, presented in a way that kind of shows the vastness and sometimes the emptiness, sometimes the loneliness of the United States, particularly at that period of time, the various tensions and structures that were going on in terms of race relations, in terms of what was going on in the cities and protest movements and things. So yeah, absolute gem. And if ever I need any sort of invigoration to get back into to what I really like doing, then I'll pick that book up, and that's one of the reasons why it's on the coffee table at the moment.
Thank you, Paul. Mally Davis, you've got one.
I had a book in mind straight away, and then I thought, oh no, a curveball, and I don't know if I can call it a book, but Craig Atkinson, the Cafe Royal Books, his collection of photographers. This one I'm holding up is London Streets 1970. Cafe Royal Books. It's fantastic. There's a collection. There's hundreds and hundreds of these books, and I found this just transformative to my photography. It could be a problem actually. I'm getting stuck in 28mm and thinking about selling all my gear, but that's another story. Cafe Royal Books, wonderful.
Very inspirational. Thank you, Mally. Matt Haddow.
The book out of the 3 books that I've got so far, but the one is the Magnum Atlas. It's 365 photographs from around the world, and it's all from the Magnum archives. And it was bought for me by my parents, and my father was a very keen photographer, so he was chuffed to bits when I started to take up a little bit of an interest in it. And so yeah, it's full of pictures from all around the world, obviously, all different eras, black and white, colour, different countries, different situations. Every time I go through it, there's something new, obviously, I find. If I'm thinking of a landscape for a composition, I'll maybe have a flick through and just pick up on some ideas and colours and textures. But I found it quite a useful reference book to use.
Nice suggestion, Matt. That will be on the show page. Who is next here?
Eric Peterson. My favorite book for the time being, and at the moment because I don't have anything from Eggleston or Todd Hido, so this will be this book called TTP. It's made by a big Japanese guy called Hayahisa Tomiyasu, and it's very ordinary because every image is taken from his flat in Leipzig down at a ping pong table. Every image is of this table and what happens around this table and the life that they have there. And it reminds me that when I lack inspiration, that in the most ordinary things, you can either find a project or a new way to see it when people interact with it and get a new image out of it. And that's what I really like. I got it recommended from another photographer who was a referee in our photo club, and she was dead right when I said I should have this book and get it.
There we go. I've noted that one down. That's one for the collection. Next up, Kieran Beard. What's your book?
The book that I like recently has given me lots of inspiration is one by Anders Peterson. There doesn't seem to be a name on this, but it's absolutely brilliant for inspiration. I do a lot of black and white street photography. So to see this and see some of the images, they're absolutely amazing. They're one-offs. Some are disgusting, some are nice. They seem to evoke emotion. They're really good. It's the sort of thing that you would not see on Instagram, for sure. But I like the high contrast. I like the way that the photographer, Anders Peterson, isn't afraid to take photos anywhere. And I came across the book by accident in a bookshop in Geneva about 6 months ago, and absolutely love it.
Don't you love it when you have a find like that? Gert-Jan Kohler is next. What do you have for us?
My book is not really original, I think. Probably you'll all have it in your shelf somewhere. It's contact sheets from Magnum. And the reason why I keep coming back to this book is that it provides such a beautiful insight in the process and the thought process of these great photographers, because you see the entire contact sheet of the film and then the frames that were selected and the frames that were thrown away. And sometimes I think the thrown away frames, I would gladly use them as portfolio images, but still it's really nice to see this process from the greatest photographers.
Some of our extra milers revealing the books they go to for inspiration. We talked actually on the Zoom chat the other night about having a more regular. We used to have a book club actually. I used to pick a book out from my bookshelf and sort of review it, look through it on one of the episodes on the Patreon channel, which we now call the Extra Mile. Well, it's called the Photowalk, but it's the Extra Mile. You're the Extra Milers. And I thought, though, that perhaps we would do something where you can hear the Extra Milers talking about the books and the things that inspire them. So possibly an Extra Milers bookshelf. Watch this space. Barney, come on. He's got the devil in him today. Oh, he's got the devil in him today. He really has. Come on, Barnes. Anyway, here's one from Judith McDermott with the accompanying pictures on the show page today. And I like this because I'm hoping it will have you think about and comment upon what is a photograph. Oh, Neil, that's sounding like serious arts show stuff. Oh, maybe it is. Dear Neil, I have a question for you about some of the images that I've been creating lately. Two to be exact, to date, but I'm enjoying the learning process and I really like the results, and I've sent them along for you to see and share. So yes, I've shared them today on the show page. So you can comment there following the letter as well, if you'd like to leave a comment on the show page, which is always very welcome. My question is this: are these still photographic images? Do these still count as photographs, since the overall finished result is created by layering my original photos of these flowers and grasses with textures made from my own photographs, I might say, but in Affinity Photo. See, another mention of Affinity Photo. There's something surreptitiously. Is that the right word? No, not surreptitiously. There's something subconsciously, that's it, subconsciously calling me, I think, to have a look at Affinity Photo today. And sometimes the effects added with one of the Nik filters, N-I-K, of course, for Nik filters. I thought the answer would be no, says Judith. With this much digital manipulation, these are some kind of art form perhaps, and no longer count as photographs. But then again, so much photography these days is or has been digitally manipulated. At what point, or how much post-manipulation does an image stop being a photograph and start being something else? And is there a name for it? I'm fairly new to Affinity Photo and I'm really enjoying learning how to use it. I always begin with my own photographs and I love taking them, but I find that in order to create an image that really speaks to me, that more and more I feel the need to sit at my computer and while away some, I'm sure they're pleasant hours too, playing around with them on the computer. So now I'm beginning to question, though, my integrity as a photographer. I question whether I should share my images that have been created this way with my beloved photography groups, such as you and your lot. Well, the answer is yes, we're delighted to have you share them. And yes, you are still making photographs. I'm questioning, says Judith, and asking with a genuine interest for the thoughts and opinions of many talented and well-respected photographers of your podcast. Are these photographs anymore? And if not, at what point did it happen? Thank you, Judith McDermott. Well, I will link to Judith's Instagram today, and I'll also put these two particular, I'm going to call them photographs up, so you can have a look at them and comment upon them and let me know, according to Judith's words, what you feel is a photograph. And I'm sure we'll have I was going to say 101 different answers. By rights, we should have. There's a fair few of you, but just a few answers would be fantastic on this. I'll add in a few of my own thoughts, though. I mean, I've used textures in the past on photographs. Now, who started me doing this? It was Joey L. I'm pretty sure I purchased for Photoshop a texture pack from Joey, and I used it in some pictures I was making of landscapes, I think, a long time ago. So yeah, I've used textures, but you know, when we start to question ourselves and our integrity as photographers, what, you know, if you think back to photographs in or producing wonderful prints in dark rooms where you're using double exposure, dodging and burning, and using all other kinds of they're not tricks, just systems, methods to do different things with photographs and prints. Does it make it any less of a print? No, I don't think so. I think it's possible that we can feel that digital manipulation is something that somehow removes the label of being a photographer, which I don't think is right at all. You can be what can you be? You can be a digital artist and a photographer all rolled into one. Now, who was it that we spoke to about that? Because I picked out a very different inspirational clip for you. But while I'm saying these words, I'm thinking that there was somebody we chatted with about this, wasn't there? Oh, a long time ago on the program. Anyway, maybe I'll come back to that. I'll do a real search in the archives and see if I can find that particular conversation. A painting, though, here's another example. A painting is still a painting, isn't it? Just because you add some items or things into the oil on the canvas that doesn't necessarily come out of the mixing tray, it's still a painting. Or is it then an art installation? Well, no, it's still a paint. In my mind, it's still a painting. So lots of questions, hopefully some answers for you. But I'd certainly be interested if you feel like joining in with this debate after you've seen the photographs that I've popped onto the show page today, which Judith made. I'm referring to them as photographs, Judith. Send your thoughts. You can either comment in the comments on the page directly, or send them to stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. Right, inspiration. This, I think, I could be accused of going slightly off on a tangent with. This is way back, episode 70. Anna Hardy, who is a photographer, a trainer, a mentor, and deals with plenty of photographers across the year when it comes to the subject of imposter syndrome. A subject we've already talked about today, but Anna, being a mentor to, as I say, many photographers, in the UK mainly, I think, is spelling out what she thinks on the subject. She has a turn at doing that as well. But also, Judith, there is, and this is where I'm shoehorning perhaps a mite, there is a smidgen in here for you as well, where Anna talks about Vive la défense, which you know is one of my favourite phrases. But she also talks about owning your difference and not caring what others think. And I only say this because you mentioned the I word, integrity, and you were questioning your integrity as a photographer. So I do think it's an interesting archive piece that may strike a chord with you or my other listener when it comes to questioning oneself, either as a photographer or as someone who's making photographs that you feel may not be photographs. Does that make sense? But it is an interesting piece about imposter syndrome, which of course we opened the show quite early on with today. Here's Anna Hardy.
What's amazing shot to one person isn't to another, and this is why it's so dangerous to compare yourself to other photographers, because it's as with any creative thing, and actually maybe even with non-creative things, you know, there are just so many different ways to do it. There isn't a right or a wrong, and you have to be honest and open about the way that you feel about things and the way that you want to work, and that's where you'll get your confidence, because The worst feeling is when you're feeling like you're trying to be something that you're not, because of course you're not going to feel confident in that. And if you're just focusing on other people's work and trying to emulate the way that they do things, you think it will make you more confident because you're following what other people are doing, but actually it makes you less confident because you're just doing things that don't necessarily resonate with you, and also that are maybe a bit of smoke and mirrors in the first place anyway. You know, it's kind of, that's not necessarily what you're seeing that photographer producing, isn't necessarily what they're producing all the time. So you're kind of setting yourself up for failure if you're expecting to be able to do that all the time. So I think it's important that established photographers are very open about the fact that, you know, we don't shoot amazing images all the time. We do feel like imposters a lot of the time. We do doubt ourselves and worry, and that's just normal.
The voice and thoughts of Anna Hardy on imposter syndrome. And if you go back to episode 70, she has quite a few thoughts about turning professional. What are you doing, Barney? I know. Don't get angry. Right on cue. Getting angry with your lead. No, it doesn't curry any favour here. Come here. Your bark is worse than your bite. Right, I know. Come on, this way. That was good on cue, though. I'm going to be putting you up for a show soon. Your own version of Lassie. Although you need to know when to stop. Yeah, stop. Now, thank you. Good boy. Yes, don't have the last word. Facebook, the Facebook group, it had a mention, didn't it? Of course, it's, I like to think, a very friendly place to hang out with like-minded photographers. We dipped in last week. We must do it more often because it always yields some super stories and super conversations that are going on. So there is a Facebook page for Photowalk, or the Photowalk, and there is a Facebook group as well. To join the group, just send us a request to come in. We'll check your shoes, and as long as they're not dirty, you can come straight in. You can even wear sneakers. Facebook, or you can send your stories in to stories@photowalk.show. 2,000 pixels wide, please. I know I've said this before. Or, of course, if you're sending your pictures in via a smartphone or made from a smartphone, then best quality, please. Right, here is one that's been waiting in the wings for a while from Ken Batchelor. It's an email that's been maturing like a fine wine. How dare you, says Ken. Hi Neil, long-time listener, so thanks for a great show, etc. You know the rest, but it applies anyway. You were talking about projects in a recent episode. I'm not quite sure which one you mean, because it is a while that we've had this email. And we talk about projects quite often, don't we? It's one of me favourite evergreens, that one. So can I point you towards one, perhaps the most impressive I have ever seen? A chap called Martin Doulard spent 2 years cycling from Vancouver to Patagonia. That is one long cycle ride, is it not? Not only did he complete this mammoth task, but he took superb photos and videos on the way and finally produced a wonderful book about the enterprise. I bought the book, 2 Years on a Bike it's called, 2 because of a previous journey, and it's amazing. In fact, it is awe-inspiring, an unbelievable achievement. Take a look. And he's given me the YouTube film, or a YouTube film that Martin recently made. Be careful though, your jaw may just hit the floor. You're not wrong there. It did. What an incredible life. For starters, that absolute freedom. Being life under your own steam, making pictures, making films, making coffee, sleeping under the stars. What is not to love? I have contacted him, and I reached out. Maybe he'll come onto the show and talk to us about that wonderful photographic adventure. Right. Thank you for that, Ken. Apologies, it's taken me a while to get to it. So, dear fellow walker, I fear that I've misled you slightly today by saying there was no big second part to the interview. And I did allude to that, I know. But actually, this is... this carries some weight, I think, these last few moments of my conversation with the artistic, or the art duo, the photographic duo, the filmmaking, the sound making, the music making duo, Alexandrov Klum. Because after all this conversation I had with him about the state of the planet, and of course our love for the planet, then I wanted to ask them at the end a particular question, a question that I hoped would bring about a positive answer. Because sometimes when you do watch these, particularly the David Attenborough ones, the films that he makes are just incredible, aren't they? Really. But you are left with a sense, well, I'm left with a sense sometimes of frustration, aren't you, when you watch those sort of programs. And not that I need everything sugar-coated in life, but I was intrigued to ask both Matthias and Iris their thoughts about their answers to a particular question.
I feel like I should put you both in a different room at this point and ask you this question, although you may give the same answer. But I'll ask you to answer it individually. Is there hope?
There is hope if we reconnect to nature, and I think we will, and we have to. And we need a paradigm shift, and we have all the science. We have so many reasons to, steer this gigantic spaceship Earth into a better and safer, into safer space. And I think we will, and we need to. I mean, if you look at COVID-19, it's an invoice from nature straight into our economy. And I think that if we remember that nature is our best friend, if we acknowledge that and if we respect that, and we all feel and take very seriously that we are all ambassadors for our own lives, for nature, and for our future, then, of course, there's hope.
Iris?
I also believe there is hope. Of course, there is hope. And I think now, together with our knowledge, if we're able to turn inwards and to find a practice, it doesn't matter if it is having a walk in nature or just finding a practice in your everyday where you're able to still those thoughts and to find some kind of peace inside. I mean, if we're looking for superficial things outside ourselves, we will suffer. And I think we will suffer more and more. So I think it's a matter of going back to yourself and finding that kind of peace and being able to give that to the world in some sense, as you're doing right now. Well, with this podcast, or what we're trying to do in our work, just trying to find that light that makes you feel alive and that you're important. It's important that you are alive in this time right now. So I think working from a point of view of love or acceptance or non-resistance, I think that would be the key. And it feels like people are going there. People need that in their everyday lives, and they need those kind of experiences.
Wow.
Yes, there is hope.
Alexandrov Klum, that's Matthias and Iris sharing their thoughts about hope. I thought that was a good note to end on this week on the Photowalk show. For links to all the photographers you've heard from or about today, their Instagrams, Vero's even, and thank you, by the way, because I didn't mention it earlier, Facebook, in the Facebook group that we have, the Photowalk Facebook group that we have. Now, I appreciate not everybody gets on with Facebook or is a member of this, so the irony is, and it's not lost on me, that some people, and we talked about just this earlier, we did actually talk about this, have gone to Vero instead of places like Facebook. But if you are on both and you make your way into our Facebook group, not the page, but the group, then there's a post in there where the community was sharing their Vero addresses so that you can go and follow each other and be immersed, seems to be the word of the moment this week anyway, in the work of others as well, which I thought was a fantastic idea. So yes, for links to the photographers that you've heard about today, the Instagrams, the Veros, etc., go to today's show page, episode 340 on photowalk.show, or follow the link in the podcast player app. Tomorrow on the Extra Mile, I've had an idea for a project. Not another one, Neil. When are you going to finish one of these? They're all long tail. That's my excuse. Long tail projects. I mean, I don't have to finish them next month. It's kind of driven by our conversation today. Also, a part of the conversation I had with Vero's founder, Ayman Hariri, that you didn't get to hear in the recording that we made together, where we talk about the mental benefits of slowing down, which I would assume is reasonably obvious, but also how manual focus can be a part of that. Are you shoehorning something, Neil? No. Listen to the extra mile. I said tomorrow. It's Sunday. The extra mile goes out on a Sunday. Yes, I've got note to self. Remember, Sunday. That's when the extra mile goes out now. Our play-out song then. Yes, it's from Jonah Lake. You heard from Johan Otterdal Edfeldt earlier on, whose stage name, come Barnes this way, whose stage name is Jonah Lake for his music. And the song that I've chosen, Jonah, it was so difficult because you have a lot of fantastic songs on your Spotify. And, let this not be the first and last time that we hear one of your songs. But I'm going to start, and I'll play it in a moment, with Mother Earth. This week's postscript to the show has to be about nature. It really does. And I've found so many great quotes. Here's one. In nature, nothing is perfect and everything is perfect. I couldn't find who said that, but that seemed to be a good one. But since we talked about hope, I'm going to take this one from Lady Bird Johnson. Now, not everybody will necessarily link her to Claudia Alter Lady Bird Johnson, who was First Lady of the United States from 63 to 69 as the wife of President Lyndon B. Johnson. I knew that, Neil. I know you knew that. But our other listener was looking at me quizzically. She wrote one or two very inspirational quotes, so she did. A force for nature she was, a force for good, a force for kindness when you read about her, by all accounts. But here's one of hers which I think is particularly fitting for today's show, to go into our play-out song from Jonas. She said, where flowers bloom, so does hope.
I've seen the sunrise high in Asia. I've seen the sun go down in Spain. Walked through forests, deserts and rice fields, and I've seen the lightning, felt the rain. I swam in lakes, rivers and oceans, danced in snow, grass and sand. Heard how the autumn winds were blowing as they moved across the lake. And I say, beauty of this world, beauty of this world, oh, beauty of this world is in your eyes. And I've eaten food from nature's gardens. I have seen your rainbow in the sky. I drank the water from your mountains, and I smoked your herbs and I got high. I traveled across all of your continents. I've seen volcanoes, walked on ice. I've surfed the ocean, holy waters, and right now I'm in paradise. Yes, I say, beauty of this world, beauty of this world, oh, beauty of this world is in your eyes. And I found my love on a sunny island. Yes, I've been lost in Amsterdam. All those cobbled streets, they got me thinking. This world made me who I am. As I say, the beauty of this world, the beauty of this world, oh, the beauty of this world's in your eyes.
Fabulous music today from Jonah Lake, and I will link to Jonah on the show page today. And that's it for this week. My thanks to Alexandrov Klum, Chris Burkhardt, Søren Solkjær, Anna Hardy, mpb.com, our extra milers, Paul, Gers, Mally, Matt, Eric and Kieran. And if you would like to be an extra miler, the link that says support the show is loud and proud on the website on the front on photowalk.show. Monday, we're back with an assignment set by Cara Mew, and of course we're walking with your mailbag letters and a special guest again next Friday. Links and further research to what you've heard will be on the show page today, and you'll find a handy link in your podcast player app to find that. Music is from the wonderful artlist.io. My thanks to Neil Ford for understanding how things actually do work under the hood technically, Emily Renier for your eyes in the Facebook group, and Andrea Gilpin for making sure Instagram and Vero is engaging. I look forward to photographing with you, hearing from you and talking with you next time.
The Photo Walk is a Loading Zone production.